I would say the biggest thing that you're going to run into with Linux is the file system is nothing like Windows. Just not even close. What I tell people, empty your cup, bro. Dump it. It's not the same. The operating system and file system are very different. You need to think of these chunks of the operating system where it has this slash, and the slash is leaning to the right. You're gonna have just a slash with nothing after it. So you got a slash leaning to the right. That's your root directory. So that's basically the top of the file system. Then every other slash has a word after it. That's going to be your /boot as an example. So everything associated with booting the machine up is under /boot. /home, all the users' home directories are in /home. User utilities, programs that users run are usually in user. And optional packages. So when you want to install stuff, you usually put it in the op directory. And var is for anything of a variable length. So for example, your logs are in var log. Your printer spool, because your printer spool is going to grow, shrink and all that. So it's a variable thing. So that's something that's going to be in your var directory, variable. And then your swap memory, we call that your swap, where Windows has a paging file. Linux has a swap system, and it's oftentimes on its own partition. But at the end of the day, it's just a chunk of your hard space that's acting like memory. So these folders, I just cd, change directory to each of these folders. I want to look at my boot stuff, I go cd/boot. I want to go to my home directory, go to cd/home/ my username. For the most part, most Linux installations today, you throw in the CD or download the ISO file and you just click next, 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 next. You can choose all the defaults and it'll partition the hard drive for you and all that kind of stuff. Today, it's nothing like what it used to be. If you wanted to talk about convenience, I would say a modern Linux operating system is about where Windows XP was in terms of its graphical user interface experience. I mean, there's a couple things that are a little tricky here and there, but a fairly non-technical user could throw in a Linux CD, boot to it, and get through the install process, right? You build user accounts, generate passwords, and then you get your typical desktop. I would say probably the most popular Linux distribution for beginners is Ubuntu. You're gonna have these desktops. With Windows, you get your most common desktop. There's not a whole lot you can do with it other than change the background color. With Linux, it's the exact opposite, man. Let the games begin. There's so many choices. So a lot of these desktops, we call them window managers. You can choose GNOME or KDE. These are the two popular ones, but there's tons of other ones. You can change how Linux looks and works and feels. And what I would say is Linux is an operating system. If you're a person who likes to have the ability to change anything you want, that's going to be Linux. If you're the type of user who just wants to power on the thing and use it, then you're probably not going to be a big Linux fan, right? Because you have to learn so much because it's so highly configurable. If you just want to be a user, I don't think Linux is the operating system for you. I would definitely say Windows or maybe even a Mac. If you just want to be a user, you just want to get on and drive. Now here's those directories that we talked about, but it's got a few more than what I covered initially. I already talked about /boot. Everything that you use when you boot up the operating system, that stuff is all there. The other thing that you have is the /bin for binary. So system binaries go there. User binaries are going to go in the USR. Now you also can have the /dev for devices. Any hardware that's on the machine is going to be in the /dev folder. Now we also have a /etc folder. This is like the registry. All the configuration settings for everything is going to be in that etc folder. You also have libraries. So if you have software installed and it requires specific libraries to run, in Windows, those libraries are called DLL files, dynamic link libraries. In Linux, they're called .so files, shared objects. Now, any media that you have, right, it's going to be /media. So that's where, like if you mount your CD-ROM and all of that. Now, you also have a MNT, mount directory. Linux is unique in that when you attach a new file system, right, we call that mounting the file system. So like if you plug in a USB drive in Windows and all of a sudden you see a new drive letter appear, you are mounting that file system. Then when you unplug it, you unmount it. You don't use that terminology, but in Linux, you have to use that terminology. Attaching a remote file system to a new file system is mounting. Removing that file system, that's unmounting. Now you have SBIN, system binaries. You have a temp directory. You have a root directory /root. Now I already told you about root as just the /, but the root user has a home directory of his own, and that's / and then the word spelled out, root. Finally, you have /proc, and /proc is going to be where all your processor information is. I would say the thing that you're going to get really, really hit with is permissions. Now, Linux permissions are read, write, execute. Read, R, write, W, and X, execute, RWX. And each permission is assigned a numeric value. So read is a 4, write is a 2, and execute is a 1. If you want to give a particular user read, write, and execute, you would give him the adding up of all those permissions. Adding up the R, which is 4, plus the W, which is 2, 4 plus 2 is 6, plus the execute, 1, so 6 plus 1 is 7. Read, write, execute, 7. If you want to assign the root user, right, read, write, execute, you would chmod, change mode, chmod, and then for the root user, the number 7. Then for any specific group, you RWX for that person as well. So it could be 7 for root, and then 7 read, write, execute for the group, and then for an individual user, another 7 read, write, execute. So it's 3 individual numbers. So the first number is for the root user, the second number is for the group, and the third number is for individual users. You gotta be comfortable with command line redirections. So let's say, for example, you need to cat or read a file. So you cat the file, and then after you cat the file, that's how you read it, okay? But then after that, you may want to take the output of that cat and do something with it. You may want to take the output of reading this one file and put it into another file. So you cat greater than sign the file name. So cat file 1 greater than file 2. Copy the contents of file 1 into file 2. So if you look about halfway down the screen on my screen, that's what you see. Copy the contents of file 1 into file 2. So you cat file 1.txt greater than sign file 2.txt. Okay? You got to know this stuff. If you want a pattern search for something, the command we use for that is called grep. And then if you want to do something complex, you oftentimes chain commands together. So you run one command, pipe the output or redirect the output to another command, pipe the output or redirect the output to another command, pipe the output or redirect the output to another command. This is going to be something that you're going to see a lot of in Linux and in the Linux Plus exam. You also should be comfortable with VI. VI is like the Linux Unix version of Notepad. So it's just a text editor. You've definitely got to be comfortable with this text editor. So you should know your basic VI commands, how to save a file in VI, how to delete a line in VI. This is all stuff you should know, okay? You definitely need to know these basic commands. So the commands that I would really focus on if I were you would be, like you see down here, this move command, RM command, a umount command, a df and du. These are all commands that you really should know.